When is it the right time to quit a language? When is it the right time to pivot and change to another language? Anyone who has become fluent in another language has gone through the slog, they've gone through the dip, it gets hard, you're like, how do I do it? And each one of them has entered it, they've gone through it, and they've come out of it on the other side. But strategic quitting is when you prioritize value in relation to the lifetime that you have left. And when anyone is quitting anything, there are 3 questions you should ask. Question 1, am I panicking, tired, or anxious? If the answer to any one of those is yes, that does not mean you should just quit learning the language. Maybe there's an imbalance somewhere. And I just want to quote a great poet, Maya Angelou, who said, "Nothing will work unless you do." That's double-bladed. It can mean 2, even 3 different things, and I guess that's why she's a poet. Nothing will work unless you do. Yeah, you have to work for it. You have to get through that dip, that slog. Keep going. But it's got to work, and you have to work. Meaning, if you're anxious, is there something wrong? Are you okay? If you're panicking, calm down. It's just a language. If you're tired, maybe you just need a nap. I took a nap the other day. It happens from time to time. Serious. Sometimes you just need a nap, and that's all it is. Remember that if you're going through a slog, that means that it's worth something. Nothing quick is genuinely good. The best friendships, by the time you realize that you're friends, you don't even know how you became friends, right? You meet someone and then you engage a few times and then suddenly you realize, well, wait, we're friends? How'd that happen, right? Languages are like that. It's a snowball. It's a gradual one to begin. And it accumulates, but it is work. One of the best things I like about Hilton hotels is the ethos of enthusiasm. And that's from their founder, Conrad Hilton, great businessman. He said, enthusiasm is a vital element toward the success of every man or woman. If you're not enthusiastic, there's something off tilt there, and you need to analyze what it is and think strategically. Is this the right thing to do? Should my emphasis be in this language? Should it be in another language? What is the reasons for my lack of success? Now, maybe you're just fooling yourself and you're not used to the slog. That happens. And speaking of success, how are you measuring success? That's question 2. How are you measuring success? I often look at successful business people and relate them to things like language learning, my friendships, my hopes, my aspirations, and one of the greatest, of course, is Henry Ford, inventor of the assembly line. And he said, nothing is particularly hard if you divide it into small parts. Nothing's hard if you just take it piece by piece. Serious, you're not going to bite an apple in one gulp. That'd be painful, right? Then you find out it has seeds. But this Henry Ford guy, he built his whole business and empire based upon dividing into parts. How are you measuring success in a language? You can't just speak it right away. Look at a 2-year-old, 2 years old. They can barely speak it. I guarantee you in 2 years, if you go full out on a language, just one. One problem I see people doing is trying to learn 4 languages at one time. I'm just focus. And stop trying to do this weird multitasking thing. Just be disciplined, right? I often think multitasking is a way for people to get out and excuse themselves from being self-disciplined in one thing. And language is a discipline. That's why it's one of the, the classical liberal arts. And I think a lot of people's troubles with a language is they're looking for an easy way through. But that slog, that dip I mentioned, that's the best part. It means you're making progress. It means that this is tough once you acquire it. You've trudged through the grass. And Another great woman, I think, who said a lot about learning is Abigail Adams. She was the first second lady and the second first lady. Married John Adams, the president of the United States. And she said, learning is not obtained by chance. It must be sought for with ardor and diligence. First of all, she said it's obtained. Like, you have to go and seize it, right? And it's not by chance. It happens for a reason that you acquire a language. And then ardor, that relates back to the enthusiasm that I mentioned with Hilton Hotels. But the key thing here, I think, is diligence. Why would she use that word? I mean, it's a long word and it's a very specific word. To be diligent in learning. But diligence is a type of awareness that's self-aware. So you need to be self-aware in the method that you're learning a language. You can't just go into this with no strategy and then expect results. Everything of value is earned. So what's your strategy for earning value? And I know you might be thinking, is this perseverance or is it delusion? And that's a fair question, but what progress have you made? How are you measuring that progress? I meet people all the time, they can say all the words for the days of the week in a language. They understand the words and or. They understand how verbs like action words end in a language, and all the pronouns, and a few mishmash of other words. And they're like, well, I don't know how to speak the language. Yeah, but you've got good reference points, like lodestars. When you hear a conversation, you can pick bits out, and that's how you learn. You learn through reference. I mean, are you fluent in your native language, or are you still just learning through context? I mean, people come out with slang words these days all the time. Woke-based. I mean, I'm just like, what, are you just making stuff up? What does that mean? But that's just how people talk. Language changes, so you're always changing too. Being diligent with your learning. People are often like, well, it's not fast enough. Well, it's not supposed to be fast. A 2-year-old. I guarantee you, if you start at the same time a child is born, day 1, and you raise that child to learn a language, within 2 years, you will beat that child because you have more experience and understanding of how language itself works and the cultural context of being in this world. That child's merely learning how to learn before he even learns the language, right? You got skills from your lifetime that you can put into this and measure it by how you've learned things before. And as you learn things and have past history in this language, you will be able to see progress. And question 3, what kind of progress are you making? Are you writing stuff down? Like, I mean, when I was beginning Welsh, I wrote stuff down all the time. And bit by bit, you gather stuff up. Like today, I just learned chalon is window in Hebrew. You know, you pick bits up slowly. Incremental progress. You know, they didn't build the pyramids all out of one stone, did they? You know, you gotta stack wins. The YouTuber Bedros Koulian says, you know, stack your wins. Being a bit better than you were yesterday. That's the kind of attitude you gotta have. And in that sense of progress, there's only 3 roads that you can take. Are you making progress? Are you standing still like in the doldrums? Or are you going backward, which is really hard in a language unless you're literally doing nothing and it decays in your memory. If you're making progress, I mean, then you're not really failing, are you? Learning a word or 2 a week, that adds up. Within a year, you could easily have 150 words. And if you keep going, listening to a radio every once in a while, then you'd be able to understand just picking out those words. You automatically begin to accrue contextual knowledge, right? If you're standing still, though, maybe it's going back to that enthusiasm. But maybe it's because you're in the wrong place. Because languages are a culture. Like, if culturally and your values, you're more of like an egalitarian person who values distance between you and others and wet environments, maybe learning Arabic is not culturally where you are right now. That's not the language you need to be learning. Maybe if your humor is really slapstick and out there and you like wild colors, maybe Japanese isn't really where you need to go. You get what I'm saying? There's a cultural context. And maybe that off tilt sense that you got in your mind is because where you're trying to go culturally isn't matching your preconception of what a culture is. Maybe you need to pivot and tilt and change. It's a question of priorities. But with that cultural context in mind that I was mentioning, the Italian director Federico Fellini said, "A different language is a different vision of life." What is your vision of life? Where are you wanting to be? When I was in Texas and I was beginning to absorb Spanish, even at that point I realized, I'm not really fitting into this Texan culture. I love where I'm from, but that's not where I'm going. And if your heart is not in the context, then you're out of context with what you're learning. Maybe you need a new direction. No, I'm not saying maybe there's something else you need to fix before you get back into the language. You need a strategy. You need to take this apart and say, what are my priorities? What is the value from this language that I'm expecting for investing my time in it, right? That slog, that grind, everybody goes through that who becomes fluent, like I said. That means that you're making progress. That means it's worthwhile. And you can get through that slog. Everyone who's learned multiple languages has. And polyglots, the reasons that we value them is, well, wow, you learned 5 languages. Wow. The reason we admire that is because it is difficult. It's not something you get for free. And I do see a lot of people just expecting that language learning should come easy. You're searching for an app, a quicker method. I say again, the best method is not learning more than one language at once. The best language learning method is slow and steady. Through the dip, through the slog. Because once you've gone through the hardest bit, it's not easy, but you know what I'm saying. The hard bit's done, right? And you can do it. But if you are really considering quitting, make sure that, you've done this for more than just a few months. If you've gone through this for 2 years, and then you're still not really making genuine progress in a language, maybe it's time to give it up and say, well, is my heart in this? Am I enthusiastic enough? Am I gonna be? Is it worth my life value time to invest in this? If it's not, fine, don't. But think about that before quitting a language. And hey, if you like that, please hit the subscribe button, consider joining me on Patreon, and Diolch yn fawr iawn, thank you very much to everyone who contributes in however way you do. We'll see you in the next episode.